Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today from the great state of California, thankfully up a little bit north, is Craig DeLuz. Craig, thanks for coming on the show today, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Lots of news to get to today, and let me go over to my show notes over here. I want to remind everybody as we get going, if you are catching us on the Polite Society podcast, Facebook, or YouTube stream, you can comment on that video. We'll get your comments. If it's relevant, we'll put it on the air and discuss it. If you're catching us anywhere else in a Facebook group or on Twitter itself or anywhere else that picks us up, OpsLens or anything like that, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag #TheBullet, and we'll get those comments as well. So, Craig, let's go ahead and we'll get started. Looks like Nebraska is possibly going to be boldly going where 25 other states have gone before. A story on Bearing Arms, a Tom Knighton story, says that Senator Tom Brewer in Nebraska is putting a emphasis on getting permitless carry through the legislature this year. Last year was the second year in a row it was pushed and failed by 3 votes in the Senate. I look forward to the day, really, Craig, when we've got 40 permitless states. I could honestly see that. 40 permitless carry states, and that pushes the Supreme Court to say, why do we have to go to the government and say, Mother, may I anyway?
Well, it would be interesting to see that happen. Unfortunately, I think we all know at least 8 states, 7 or 8 states, that quite positively will never, ever, ever go that direction unless they're forced to by the Supreme Court. And even then, they're probably going to do exactly what they've been doing when it comes to concealed carry, which is basically name every place outside of your home as a sensitive location and trying to prevent you from being able to carry there. It is amazing to me to see how bad some of these locales are getting. But Nebraska was one of the ones that I am surprised that has not passed permitless carry yet. It's just, to be honest, it's really kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah, and Nebraska is surrounded on all but one side with permitless carry states. South Dakota is permitless. Iowa is permitless. Kansas is permitless, and the only Colorado is not yet. But that's the only state that borders Nebraska. And Wyoming, they have a small section of Wyoming that touches Nebraska. Colorado is the only state that surrounds them and does not yet have permitless carry. So
yeah, kind of weird. Kind of weird.
I hope they get it done, and when they do, Nebraska, welcome to the party. Let me put it that way. Certainly wishing you folks all the best in getting that passed. Next story, Craig. This one comes off of AmmoLand. AmmoLand has been running stories where UPS and FedEx are going to be charged with, the federal government is charging them with tracking firearms purchases. And UPS finally got back to AmmoLand and issued a very long statement. Part of that statement I'm going to read out loud. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives issued a final rule that expanded the definition of parts that qualify as a firearm frame or receiver and thus as a firearm. UPS updated its policy to reflect the rule that states UPS cannot accept firearms without serial numbers or any partially complete, disassembled, or non-functional frames or receivers that qualify as frames or receivers. What they did not in their statement cover was the issue where they'd said that if they find any 80%, they would destroy them. And that, look, if you're paid to ship something, you're paid to ship something, not to decide on whether it's legal or not and get rid of it. How much drugs is shipped through UPS every year?
Well, I think the funny part about this is they go out of their way to say, well, we didn't actually change the rules. The law changed. And we just sent you these letters. Now, there are FFLs that have copies of the original letter. And trust me, this letter was basically, we will confiscate your stuff and we will destroy it. Now, once again, this is a private company. Which, by the way, if it's an 80% lower, then guess what? It's not a firearm. It's your private property. It is legal property. And they do not have a right to confiscate it. And that's why I think they wound up catching so much flack, and that's why they've come back with this. And, the fact that they went out of their way to go after firearms retailers on some of this stuff was just beyond outrageous. And I think that what's happened is that they are reeling from the back from the splashback of their decision because they're realizing now that they're not just catching the ire of firearms retailers, they're catching the ire of their customers.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Let me get a couple of comments in here. Gerald over on oops, I hit the wrong button. How about I hit that button instead? Gerald over on the Facebook side said if they know something is illegal, they would contact the authorities. That happens from time to time. Yes, that is absolutely correct. However, what am I going to... what I'm trying to say is there's a lot they don't catch. And how are they... I want to know how they find when somebody ships a box with an 80% lower in it, how they find out what's in there, and then on their own, without opening the box, decide we're going to destroy this.
Right, exactly. That's what they don't tell you. They don't tell you. How do they know this? How are they going to find out? How are they going to... there's a lot of stuff that they're not going to catch. And what they're saying in here is they're saying that they're not going to be opening people's pack, or they're not going to be inspecting them to be sure what's in them. They're not going to be sharing the information unless someone comes to them with a subpoena or with a warrant. Well, then what's your point? I don't get what your point was in terms of sending out that letter.
And I put my note up in show notes. This reminds me a lot of late 1940s and 1950s Germany. I was just following orders. I was just doing what I was told to do.
Right. Well, once again, by the way, this is another example of corporate America colluding, or the government either pressuring or colluding with corporate America to infringe on the rights of citizens. Just so you know.
Yeah. One more from Gerald. My UPS FedEx always pack my ammo boxes with a smile. I get ammo deliveries from them as well. That's how I get most of my ammo is by UPS and FedEx. I'm not going to say they do it with a smile because some of those packages are a little hard to come off the truck and get all. They're a little heavy by the time they get it up to my front porch. So I'm not going to say they do it with a smile. They do it. So.
Unfortunately, in places like California, unless you have a vendor license or you are an FFL, you cannot receive ammunition at home. You actually have to have it shipped to a California ammunition vendor or FFL so that you can go through your, let me do my air quotes, background check.
Yeah. Which is another, yeah.
Which, by the way, it's not really a background check.
Not only do you have to say "Mother, may I" to get a permit slip to carry your gun in public, which in California you're probably not going to get even after Bruin. You have to get a "Mother, may I" to buy ammo for your darn gun, and a "Mother, may I" for the specific gun you have chosen that they've approved on the list that you've chosen to buy. Yeah.
Right.
Ugh. Next story I got, South Carolina, there's a proposal in the legislature, reading just a little bit of this off abcnews4.com, with gun violence and school shootings happening around the country, the topic of discussion is how to keep students safe. Senator Brian Adams, a Republican who represents portions of Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester counties, believes schools need another layer of security. Quote, what I'm doing is allowing school districts within my bill to say whether or not they want schools to be armed, so I'm leaving it up to the school districts, said Adams. What this bill would do is if you are a school staff member in South Carolina, you could now go to the school board and say, Mother, may I please protect the children in my care? I don't know how many teachers or staff members are going to go through the process of trying to get approved through their local school board. We'll see, and it's a tiny step, but I believe it's a good step. What do you think, Craig?
Well, it is a good step. I think just like in a place of business, I think the person who runs that business has a right to say whether or not someone should be allowed to possess a firearm, and that person should be allowed to then decide whether or not they want to be there or not. So, but the challenge here is, the good thing with school districts is that if you, well, I give you an example. There was a school district here that actually at one point allowed people to carry on campus, right? They had allowed, if you had a concealed carry permit, you could carry on campus. You just had to notify them. Now, as a part of that, what they also asked you to do or allowed you to do was to be a part of the active shooter response plan, meaning you train side by side with law enforcement. Because if there was an active shooter situation on your campus, obviously you would wind up being then the subject matter or the expert there on the campus, because you would know the campus, you would have gone through all of the training and probably done as much active shooter training at your school site as any law enforcement officer did. So knowing that would be a good idea. The problem is that you are going to have a whole bunch of school districts that are going to say, no, we do not want to allow folks to carry guns on campus because, for some stupid reason. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I just it's kind of frustrating because I sit on a school board. I'm a big believer in allowing individuals who off campus, look, anywhere you are, if you have a right to keep and bear arms and you decide you want to defend yourself, and the students, I believe you should be given the right to be able to do so.
I totally, absolutely agree with you. And I honestly don't think you should have to go to any government body and say, Mother, may I. I believe because you are not a bad guy, you passed the background check to get your darn firearm. If you want to be a part of defending your students' lives, I believe you ought to be able to do that.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Next story,
I believe that if you're going, especially if you're providing training and you have an active shooter plan, I think you should. I don't believe you should be required to, but I believe you should work to be a part of that plan.
Yeah. And I just noticed we got some more comments coming in. The next two are off of YouTube. 500 Magnum. God forbid you want to protect yourself and family. That's a crime. Just ask authority. And follows up with gun-free zones get people killed. There's a point to that. Very rarely do you see an active shooter go to a police station or go to a gun store or go to a gun range to try and wreak havoc. They go to gun-free zones where they're generally not going to get shot back at.
Well, and that's another good point. When you allow individuals to carry on campus, that is no longer a soft target. Even if nobody actually carries on campus, people know that potential perpetrators know that there's a possibility that they could encounter someone trained with a firearm. So they're going to look for soft targets, and that's exactly what most active shooters seek to do. So no, your point is very, very well taken.
Well, and before we go on to the next story, I got one more point. And then thinking back to the movie theater shooter in Colorado a few years ago, he specifically targeted the theater he used because he committed his crime in because it was a gun-free zone. There were theaters closer to him that were not gun-free zones, yet he chose this one because it was posted.
Right, and so therefore he knew the chance. Yeah. he knew the chances of meeting resistance were reduced.
Yes.
And that's the thing that folks fail to realize is that these folks, they're doing this stuff and they want to increase the likelihood of their success. And one way to increase the likelihood of your success is to make sure that you're going to meet no opposition.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are you going to fight back with? Harsh words if you're not armed? I mean, yeah. Next story, this one off of Ammo Land, another story off Ammo Land. Yesterday, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives notified us it intends to destroy the firearms associated with the botched Operation Fast and Furious. Rep. Jim Jordan, ranking member of the House Committee on the Judiciary, wrote to ATF Director Stephen Dettelbach on December 6th. I strongly urge you to reconsider this decision and request that you preserve this evidence. This is a David Codrea article, and I think here ATF knows that in January there's a new sheriff in town when it comes to the House of Representatives, that they are able to launch investigations. So I think come January, there are two things that are going to happen. You're going to end the investigations on January 6th, and you're going to start investigating things that matter more to the rest of America. It's things like the Operation Fast and Furious debacle, and honestly, our election laws. So.
Well, what's interesting is so you had I mean, this was like dating back to, it started in 2009. It kind of became public in 2012.
Yep.
I mean, we've known about this for all of Obama's second term. We went through all of Trump's term, and now all of a sudden, and now they're looking at getting, now we're 2 years into Biden's term, and just now they're deciding, almost 10 years later, they're deciding, you know what, we're going to go ahead and destroy these weapons. Well, gosh, I wonder why that is. And I think you're right. I think that there are a lot of things where now we're starting to find out, now that our intelligence agencies, the FBI, the CIA, Department of Homeland Security, the IRS, not even the intelligence, but now that we're starting to find out how many of these agencies have actually been politicized and weaponized, now it's time to find out, okay, well, what investigations out there are they soft pedaling? Are they backpedaling on? Are they not? Are they slow walking? Because we know that they're trying to affect elections, and in part, in fact, I think affect elections in order to prevent or once again slow down investigations into the stuff that they're doing. I'm like this, and I have all the respect in the world for law enforcement. But our founders created a governmental system which allowed us to be skeptical. They were skeptical of government because as government grows, government can get out of control, and it's important for us to make sure that we keep it in control. So, yeah, no, I want to know if anything is particularly hinky or even slightly hinky, we need to be able to look into it and know they should not be destroying evidence.
Yes. Well, and from 2009, that would mean here that next year it'll be 14 years. They've kept these around for 14 years. It can't be that great of an expense to keep them around a while longer. I can't believe that would be a huge problem for them. And that. We also had a story last week. You and I haven't talked about it yet, but we had a story come out last week that the AFT, as Biden calls it, the ATF, has an issue with when they send guns to be destroyed, they're not always destroyed. Sometimes they even find their way back out into the public through employees of this destruction bureau. How do we know? Again, linking to this story, they may want to destroy them only to have them back out in the public again.
Well, yeah, and I have a couple of issues with that. Number one, I think that put it to you this way: unless the firearm, I don't necessarily believe that it should be a quote unquote illegal configuration, but unless a firearm has been deemed an illegal configuration, why do they need to destroy it anyway? That makes absolutely no sense to me. It's a perfectly good tool. You don't take a hammer and destroy it just because, well, people harm people with hammers. So that's number one. So I don't have an issue with them being sent back. But the question is, why are these firearms why not return them to their rightful owner? How about that? If they were stolen firearms, and if I don't know, that whole thing kind of bugs me with, one, them wanting to destroy evidence, but then number two, just the idea of destroying something that individuals, in particular, maybe someone who can't afford a firearm that individuals who probably couldn't otherwise afford a firearm can be able to utilize to defend themselves in their home.
Yeah, it would be best of all possible worlds. We would have an Alan Gottlieb or someone like that heading the ATF, where the proper things could be done. And I'm right there with you. If we have single moms that are getting slowly getting their firearms. Let's face it. I mean, a single mom in the inner city coming up with $400 for a Glock may be a goal beyond their reach. They may go for lower priced firearms like the High Point or something else. Even then, that takes up some saving. Look, get a government program. If you pass a background check and you're a good person, you want to defend yourself, here's some confiscated arms from the gangs that ended up at the AFT warehouse. And I think Craig froze up on me.
Did you call it the AFT on accident or on purpose?
Oh boy, Craig, we've got an issue with your stream.
See my.
Let me see here. Yeah, we're having issues. Your stream has dropped to 0, bud. I'm just going to move on to our next story. This off the Washington Examiner. It's a very in-depth story, but what it does is it details what New Jersey, New York, and Oregon specifically in this story are doing to cut back on our Second Amendment rights. And Craig dropped and is coming back in, and we'll see. He should be popping back up in just a second. And as soon as he does, as soon as he's back in, we'll get him back up. And I think he's there. Craig, there you are, man. Nope. Now it just went. Now he just dropped again. Okay. So I'll bring Craig back in as soon as we get him back. But the story off of Examiner.com examines New Jersey, New York, and Oregon specifically in their effort to tighten restrictions after Bruin. And Craig, are you there? No, I don't see his picture's back, but he's not with us yet. Specifically, I'm getting some audio, but I'm still having a problem with you, bud. Let me see. Let me click that, turn the feed to you back down a little bit in case it's a feed issue. And then one more story I wanted to cover today. This one off of Truth About Guns. We are winning on this story. The story is majority of Americans approve of Supreme Court decisions that expand and protect their gun rights. And I'm going straight to the Marquette Law, the law.marquette.edu survey, and the question was, in 2022, the Supreme Court ruled that the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms protects the right to carry a gun outside the home. How much do you favor or oppose this decision? The options for answer were strongly favor, somewhat oppose, and strongly oppose. Those were the options. 36% strongly favor. 28% somewhat favor. That comes up to the two positive ones for a total of 64%. Somewhat opposed was at 19%, and strongly opposed was at 16%. So that would be 36%, and so 2-1, the public approves of the freedoms that were expanded in the Bruin decision. And I think that is a fantastic result. We are winning, and we continue to win. Let me go ahead and move over here. And with Craig not here right now, I'm gonna get up some comments and see if. And this, by the way, this would be a great time to comment. If you have something you want to talk about that is not in what I had researched today, just comment and we'll get that up and we'll talk about it. We've still got about 4 minutes left. And I've got a button here. I very, very rarely, if I ever at all, use it. And there it is. The brave young man in Indiana, going back to the gun-free zone discussion, is a hero, yet they act like he's a criminal. That's absolutely true, and I see Craig moving around rather than a frozen video screen, so let's try this again. Craig, are you with us?
I believe I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. All is good in the world now again. I don't know what happened with the connection, but
I'm at a client's place and I'm listening to them talk in the background. I think they failed to notify anyone that they were about to reset the router.
That'll do it. That'll do it. One I definitely wanted to get your take on here. We still got a couple minutes left of the show. There's a Truth About Gun story, and the Marquette Law put out a survey whether you approve or disapprove of the decision in the Bruin decision that the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms protects the right to carry outside the home. How much do you favor or oppose this decision? Strongly favor 36%, somewhat favor 28%, adding up to 64% either strongly or somewhat favor this decision. And Craig, I'm going to say it's somewhat surprising, but not totally surprising, and just more evidence that we're winning, bud. What do you think?
Well, I think that the message, quite frankly, is this: look, your right to defend yourself does not stop at your front door, and that's really what this comes down to. Is prior to Bruin, anti-gunners argued that your right to defend yourself, that ends at your front door. Once you leave your home, you no longer have a fundamental right to defend yourself. And the Bruin decision really kind of tells us what we all already knew, is that you definitely have a fundamental human right. I'm not talking about a constitutional right. I'm talking about a fundamental human right to be able to defend yourself, and that's pretty much what it codifies. And I think the average person gets that. Now, the question is, and I think where a lot of people out there kind of vary is, well, they support it, but they still believe in quote unquote reasonable regulation.
Yeah.
And you know, I think there are those of us who disagree with any regulation, but then even amongst those who are like, well, they want reasonable regulation, they disagree as to what reasonable is. There actually is some regulation that while I may disagree with, I can say, okay, that falls under reasonable. But there's some stuff that people call reasonable that is completely and utterly unreasonable.
I am one of the I call myself a Second Amendment absolutist, and I believe even that background checks are an infringement. If I could, I would get rid of all gun laws, period. Because let's face it, shall not be infringed means don't touch this. So,
if you go by the absolute of the Constitution, that would be completely accurate. Unfortunately, Supreme Court just have said that, well, you can have some regulation, and people on the other side have pretty much hung their entire tent, their entire campaign on that some reasonable regulation to pass a bunch of completely and utterly unreasonable regulation.
Get a couple comments in here, then we got to get out of here because we're already past our 30-minute window. 500 Magnum says, welcome back, Craig. And he followed up later with, I don't support any gun control. And I think he agrees with me with all gun laws violate the Second Amendment. Let's we're over a minute past, so let's go ahead and do this. Craig, tell us about the rundown, and is Morning Coffee with Craig we still doing 2 days a week? Is it advanced past?
We're taking a little bit of a hiatus until the beginning of the year, but yes, right now it's 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Also, you can see the rundown every afternoon. Well, if you're on the West Coast, it's in the afternoon. It's actually early evening on the East Coast. That's 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch the rundown Monday through Friday, either at wherever you find 2A News, or you can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on OpsLens. You can watch us on Spotify, however you like to get your video. We also have an audio podcast that goes out as well.
If you're watching this, you ought to be able to find it on the same venue you find this. You just search for the rundown. So, thank you, Craig. And on my end, I want to invite everybody to come back the rest of the week, 5 p.m. Central Time, and join us. We're just 1 hour after Craig starts his, we start ours. So, thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you